and welcome to all our viewers watching us live through television screens and our online social media platforms, Facebook and YouTube. I'm Erin Imana, will be reading the news for you today. Stay tuned. Proceeding to the details. Bureau of Health. In an article on Ethiopian site, Dr. Hagos Godifai, head of Tigray's Bureau of Health, said that hospitals across Tigray state have so far registered over 5,000 deaths related to the ongoing siege. The deaths were recorded between July and October 2021, while causes of the death were mainly due to hunger and lack of medical supplies. Dr. Godifai also emphasized that if unfettered humanitarian assistance could not be secured in the near future, thousands more stood to lose their lives due to easily preventable diseases. Sablor Glama has more.
The 7-month-long siege on Tigray has had a devastating impact on Tigray's health system, previously one of the best in the developing world. According to MSF, Tigray's health system had a functional referral system with health posts in villages, health centers, and hospitals in town, transporting sick patients to hospitals. Before the war, 94% of women in Tigray had access to antenatal care, with more than 70% of health facilities and about half of the ambulance funded through the community contributions. In an interview with Tigray television, Dr. Hagos Godifai said that Tigray's health system had exponentially improved.
The health system of Tigray is one of the strong health systems in the country, with a potential coverage of 95% and actual coverage of around 13 million visits every year. So the health system accounts for about total of around 1,000 health facilities, 741 health posts, 242 health centers, 39 health hospitals. When we talk about the health system of Tigray, we have to go back. Why are those health facilities established? What makes the health system strong than the other countries? In the first place, the contribution of the community in Tigray is amazing. More than 70% of our health facilities, especially the health posts, were built by the contribution of our community. So this by itself creates, by the way, awareness and ownership among our communities. So the demand is very high. So since the health facilities were like constructed by the community, they were using the health service utilization on a regular basis. The other important thing is, this is the result of the joint efforts, not only the community at large, but also the government and the non-governmental organizations as well. So this is the joint effort of three parties, like the community at large, the government, and the NGOs. By collaborating those parties, we have been establishing a good system, and we were, by the way, visited by different African countries. In the first place, Health Extension Program was born here in Tigray. The birthplace is here in Tigray. It was started as a pilot basis in 2002, and it was scale up to the country, Ethiopia, and the other African countries as well. When we take maternal mortality before the crisis, it was 186 per 100,000, and child mortality, under 5 child mortality was 30 per 1,000 live births. When we go back 20 years, the maternal mortality was 1,000 and beyond, and the under 5 mortality was 167 per 1,000. So it declined from 167 to 30 per 1,000 live births. So it's about 13 million people were visiting our health facilities in 1 year time. This is because we have introduced community health insurance. Up to 60% of the people of Tigray, especially the farmers, were benefited from the health system. They paid $50 per year, and they get service the whole year, including their families. We have about 22,000 health workforces in the system. This doesn't include Aksum and Aidar referral hospitals. So we have about 312 ambulances. And majority, almost 50% of them were bought by the contribution of the community. So our health system is the result of, I can say, the lion's share goes to our community.
But the situation in Tigray is entirely different. According to a damage assessment by Maqala University that revealed that over 78% of health posts, 72% of health centers, and 80% of hospitals have been destroyed by the Allied forces.
It's very difficult. It's desperate, by the way, to see people dying because of hunger. It's not a big deal to treat hunger. It's about food. It's about food supply. But they don't have at hand. We are tied. Our hands are tied today.
In his article on Ethiopia's Insight, Dr. Hagos Godefai, head of Tigray's Bureau of Health, says that the Bureau had so far registered 5,421 deaths related to the siege. The deaths were recorded between July and October 2021, while the cause of death was primarily due to hunger and lack of medical supplies. The Bureau head stated that deaths have continued to show an alarmingly increase, primarily due to easy preventable diseases as medicines ran out or expire. The article stated that of the 5,421, 1,500 of them had died due to malnutrition, including 369 infants. Dr. Hagos also emphasized that mortality assessments was only able to cover 333 vicinities, just 40% of Tigray, due to continued occupation of these areas by the Allied forces and lack of fuel, and said that the destruction has wiped out 20 years of progress. Dr. Hagos said that the data was collected by non-governmental organizations from their project sites in collaboration with the Health Bureau of Tigray. Lastly, Dr. Hagos said that if unfettered humanitarian assistance could not be secured, thousands more stood to lose their lives due to easily preventable diseases.
St. Mary Hospital has announced that it has been forced to suspend services due to lack of medical supplies. The hospital used to provide treatment to thousands of patients across Tigray, but has now run out of basic medical supplies due to the ongoing siege on Tigray. That has included a blockade on humanitarian assistance and medical supplies. Auraha Sensei has the details.
For 7 months now, the Ethiopian government has imposed an all-encompassing siege on Tigray that has included a blockade on all medical supplies coming into the region. The months-long siege on the region has a devastating impact on the most vulnerable members of the community, including children, the elderly, and people suffering from chronic illnesses. This is St. Mary Hospital in Aksum. Patients here that suffer from illnesses such as diabetics, hypertension, and other chronic illnesses say their lives are in great danger due to the ongoing siege.
They told me there is no medicine available here. I will try my last chance at a private pharmacist, but if I don't get my medication, I will go straight home and await my days.
They prescribed aspirin, ACT, and other medication that is not available in stock. In fact, no medicine is available at the pharmacy. The hospital can provide treatment if it doesn't have medication. I have diabetes and hypertension. I can survive without medicine.
Health workers at the hospital say lack of medical supplies has brought the hospital to a near standstill, making it unable to provide even the most basic medical treatments to its patients.
It's difficult to tell patients no medication available. They usually leave the pharmacy crying because we couldn't help them. We cry on the inside and we feel wordless. If we are not able to find medication soon, our people will vanish.
We have run out of gloves, so we started washing and reusing them. We believe this is safer than operating with our bare hands. It's just desperation.
Dr. Solomon Huri, medical director at the hospital, says the hospital has reached a breaking point and has suspended operations due to lack of medical supplies.
This hospital had been providing medical care to hundreds of thousands of patients, including IDPs, but we have been forced to suspend service provision, including to children and patients suffering from chronic disease.
Health workers and patients at St. Mary Hospital called on the international community to play its part to ensure that medication is available to all those in need in Tigray.
The international community should do its part to resolve the dire situation on the ground and help those in desperate need of medicine and food in Tigray. The international community should go beyond statements and take decisive action.
Humanitarian crisis in Tigray has escalated and hundreds of patients, including children, mothers and patients with chronic illness, are dying due to man-made humanitarian catastrophe.
Human rights groups and media outlets from across the globe have established the use of rape as a weapon of war in Tigray. Our reporters visited the district Anqabargala in southeastern Tigray, where women shared their horrific stories of sexual violences with us. Here are the details. One significant feature of the conflict in Tigray has been the use of rape as a weapon of war. Ethiopian and Eritrean forces have taken women into sexual slavery, gang-raped, and assaulted them, leaving an enduring physical and psychological scare. We visited the district of Tanquabargala and spoke to survivors of sexual violence that told us soldiers came to their homes at late hours and assaulted them.
He came at 12 a.m. at midnight and shot, "Open the door, open the door, or I will break it into pieces." And then I screamed out for help. There was a neighbor that wanted to help me, but they locked the door on him. I continued to scream out for help, but no one was able to help me. The soldier then broke the lock. He came into the house and threatened to stab me in the neck right here. And then he picked up my baby and threw her away. I thought that he had killed my child at that moment. He took my flashlight from my hand and shoved it under my bed. He then held the knife on my neck as he raped me.
When they break into your house, no one is able to help you. I screamed for help, but there was no one. He pointed his gun at me. I was too scared to say anything, and that when he raped me.
The victims also shared horrific stories of violence, including gang rape by soldiers.
They pulled the lock out and entered. They were all armed soldiers. The two stood outside, and the other one came in. They didn't say anything. I was on bed rest after having given birth recently. I wasn't able to move around a lot at the time. I couldn't say anything. I was just shaking, terrified. I couldn't scream because I didn't know my father would come out and they would kill him. I didn't want to put my family in danger. Where would I even go? If he came out, they might kill him. And so I just sat still. So he locked the door and raped me. And then the other two also raped me later. They all took turns.
The use of gang rape as a weapon of war in Tigray has been widely documented by human rights groups and the media organizations across the globe. The reports of rape have included excessive violence and the use of ethnic slur, also alluring to genocidal intent of the invading armies. For more than a year, the Nobel Committee has remained silent on the conflict in Tigray until last week, when the committee issued a statement saying Abiy Ahmed has a special responsibility to end the conflict. But in a revealing interview this week, the chair of the Nobel Committee said she doesn't believe that there is right or wrong in the conflict in Tigray. Salome Taghlai has more.
The 8-month-long occupation of Tigray by allied Ethiopian and Eritrean forces has led to the deaths of thousands of innocent civilians. Even after the retreat of the allied forces from much of Tigray, the Ethiopian government has imposed an all-encompassing siege on Tigray, blocking the entry of all essential items, including food and medical supplies.
The situation is serious. Nowhere in the world you would find a crisis like what you see in the northern part of Ethiopia, especially in Tigray. None. Nowhere in the world are we witnessing hell like in Tigray.
However, amidst a humanitarian catastrophe that has left more than 5 million people in need of urgent food assistance, more than 1.2 million displaced, and thousands dead, the chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, Berit Andersen, says that there is no right or wrong in the conflict in Tigray and describes the situation as complex.
The Nobel Committee making the statement we have made is not passing judgment on the war in Ethiopia which ones of the parties are right or wrong.
The chair unfortunately fails to discuss the siege on Tigray that has blocked humanitarian assistance from reaching the millions in need, or the discontinuation of all basic services to the region, including banking, telecom, and power supplies, neglecting the failure of the Prime Minister to abide by the principles of international humanitarian law regarding collective punishment, and the responsibility to protect civilians during armed conflict. The chair says the Prime Minister was actually being held to higher standards by the committee due to his role as Nobel Peace Laureate.
What I am emphasizing is that carrying the Peace Prize is a very heavy cloak to carry, and it rests a certain responsibility on Prime Minister Abiy in contributing seriously to peace and entering negotiations instead of using military means only to solve the situation in his country.
The question of who deserves the Nobel Peace Prize and for which effort has always been controversial. Alfred Nobel, founder of the award, had stated that the prize should be awarded to the person who shall have done the most for fraternity between nations, for the abolition or reduction of standing armies, and for the holding and promotion of peace congress. But the Nobel Committee seems to have a new set of criteria for awarding the Nobel Peace Prize, specifically the interest of the Nobel Committee to remain relevant.
This is a question often placed to the Nobel Committee: have we given prizes too soon? I would like to reverse that question. If we were always sure of the outcome of a peace effort, the Nobel Peace Prize wouldn't have been as relevant as it in fact has been through 120 years.
The Nobel Committee, jumping the gun and awarding individuals that were yet to establish a meaningful process towards peace, has led to absurd outcomes, like an award to Kim Dae-jung for his efforts to reunite the divided Korean nations. But in countries like Ethiopia, the Nobel Committee's attempts at remaining relevant have had a dangerous outcome. Experts and international media, quoting former members' administration, have reported how the award emboldened Abiy Ahmed. A professor of peace and conflict at the Jokens University College in Norway, Kjetil Trumbull, argues that the Nobel Prize emboldened Abiy to reform the internal political structure, which was the single most significant trigger for the war today. Trumbull also states that high-level party insiders have told him that in the negotiations to form a new prosperity party merging the previous EPRDF, he used the prize to basically say, "I have an international mandate to rule as I see fit." In a report by Addis Fortune on December 2019, Abiy Ahmed, in the days following the announcement of the merger, had threatened a group of Tigrayan business people that he would cut off flights into the region, suspend federal subsidies, and other public services if TPLF should choose not to merge. Threats his since made good on, clearly illustrating the prize had emboldened Abiy Ahmed and dissuaded international partners from posing questions when the Prime Minister chose to delay elections under the pretext of the corona pandemic. But the Nobel Committee has continued to stand by its decision, saying it could not have foreseen the future.
The committee stands behind the decision made in 2019 of rewarding the Peace Prize to Prime Minister Abiy, and on the basis, on the picture you painted so efficiently in your introduction. Since then, the situation has changed. There is a war in Ethiopia, and the Nobel laureate is very unprecedented participant in that war as a prime minister. And that is very unfortunate that the Peace Prize laureate is participating in a war, but we could not foresee this situation.
Nausan Naibelai, a political analyst, says the chair saying that the future was unpredictable is a clear indication that the chair was more concerned about salvaging the Nobel's reputation than playing a positive role to end the humanitarian catastrophe.
The Nobel Committee, they are trying to defend the irrational decision they made to give Abiy the Nobel Peace Prize. They are very much concerned about their institution's reputation rather than the crimes committed by Abiy against the people of Tigray. they don't want to take responsibility for their miscalculation and premature decision. The war on Tigray, or the Tigray genocide, was essentially predictable. It was not unpredictable. Someone has to be very naive to expect a development project from the alliance of Isaias and Abiy. It was a pact of war. One has to be politically ignorant, to my understanding, to expect a positive development from the alliance of dictators, Formaggio, Isaias, and Abiy.
The all-encompassing siege on Tigray has had a devastating impact on internally displaced persons who had been forced to depend on humanitarian assistance to satisfy their basic needs. Our reporters visited an IDP camp in Ma'ala that's been forced to close down due to lack of basic supplies. Sablor Glema has the details.
The all-encompassing siege on Tigray has had a devastating impact on internally displaced persons who had been forced to depend on humanitarian assistance to satisfy basic needs. The blockade on humanitarian aid especially had led to the depletion of food aid and medical supplies. We visited Dabradamo Hotel in Ma'ala. The hotel had been repurposed to serve as an IDP camp for the many in need, but is now being forced to close as it can no longer provide food and other basic items.
The siege has been going on for so long. There were 26 families sheltered here. I lived here with my son because we had nowhere to go. Imagine what we were going through.
Until there is peace, God might have something for me. Everything is blocked. There is no internet, no means of communication. We can't even do business because nothing is coming into Tigray. It's really stressful.
I
had a shop and a restaurant back home. I had a great life there. I was able to take care of my family and was on my way to buy a house.
I used to own a bar. However, now I have lost everything. I don't have work. I don't even know what I can do for a living. I was raised in the city, so I don't even have land that I could farm. I used to work at someone else's shop, and later I was able to open my own business. It is all gone now.
Barakat Makonnen was working with other partners to support the IDPs sheltered at Dabradamo Hotel, and he says the prolonged siege on Tigray has made it impossible for them to continue his support.
موضعي زينبرن عديتات مسدقن ابزي نكنبرا فقيدنا تجزاون مستوهبنا.
We organized this place so that mothers and children who had nowhere to go could find shelter. We collected support coming from people that lived abroad in Addis Ababa and Maqala to provide these women with basics such as food. But now, due to lack of communication, transport, and other basic services, we've been forced to discontinue our assistance.
The IDPs say they now have nowhere to go and no means of receiving assistance.
There is no communication, so they can't do anything for us anymore. He was helping as best as he could. He begged for us and fed us, but it's beyond his capacity now. Now I have nowhere to go to. All of our properties were looted. The invading forces took everything we owned. We have no job to do now.
It is to be recalled that there are over 6 million people in an urgent need of food assistance and nearly 1 million in famine-like conditions, while no trucks carrying aid have entered Tigray since December 14.
And with that, we are going to wrap up our news for the hour. I'm Mary from Ma'ala, Tigray. Thank you for tuning in.